Yeah.
But we talked about defense. We talked about what's going to need to happen in this game, turnover battle, and how great Baylor is at stealing the ball away from opponents. But in the end, it's actually going to be the Oklahoma defense that comes through clutch in a game like this. Oklahoma's defense gets a late turnover or a late stop in the fourth quarter and escapes with a win in Waco. I think it's the Sooners defense that steps up. I think they have a more explosive offense, more so than Baylor's, and I think maybe down 3, maybe down 7, maybe down 8, one possession game, Baylor has a chance to go win it or tie it, and it's Oklahoma that gets a key interception or a key stop on fourth down and escapes with this win to keep their playoff hopes alive. Well, it was a roller coaster of a game, but in the end, the result was exactly what we predicted. Welcome back to the Gridiron Expert, bringing you some of the best college football news, predictions, and analysis. And today we are recapping the wild Week 12 in college football. A week that saw its fair share of upsets, 6 teams in the top 25 going down, including 2 of the remaining unbeaten teams that lost for the first time this past Saturday. Divisions were clinched across the country, and we saw a significant amount of devastating injuries. None bigger, of course, than Tua Tagovailoa's injury at Alabama. The star quarterback and Heisman Trophy contender will be out for the remainder of the season. More on him in a second, but we're going to kick things off with arguably the biggest game of the day. Number 10 Oklahoma taking down number 13 Baylor 34-31 in a game that, in my opinion, is already up there as one of the best games of 2019. Baylor was one of those unbeaten teams that we mentioned that went down for the first time. Baylor was sitting at 9-0, college football playoff contenders, Big 12 title contenders coming into this Saturday. And if you just watched the first half and went to bed, you would have thought that Baylor would have absolutely finally propelled into the top 10. The committee was dissing them for weeks on end, had them at 13th despite being undefeated. And like I said, that first half was just unbelievable if you were a Bears fan. Baylor was up 28-3 in the second quarter. They were up 31-10 at halftime. So they led by 25 points at one point in this game. At one point in time, Baylor led Oklahoma by 25. Everything was going their way. They were forcing turnovers. They were moving the ball at will. And really, when you look at it, Baylor dominated pretty much 58 minutes of this game. But unfortunately, as we all know, football is played in a 60-minute time slot. 58 minutes is not going to cut it. Baylor being up by 25 was phenomenal, but they were shut out in the second half by Oklahoma. Lincoln Riley went in there and made some adjustments to his defense. Baylor shut out. Oklahoma scores 24 unanswered, including the game-winning field goal with just a minute 45 left. But if you were like me, who in a way was kind of hoping Baylor was going to win this game, a guy that I thought Baylor had been dissed. I was disappointed with the way they had been ranked from the committee, not just in week 1, but last week as well. I was disappointed that they weren't getting enough respect. I was disappointed they were 10-point underdogs. They did cover the spread, but I thought that the 10-point underdogs was a little too large for a team like Baylor. So if you were like me, you thought Baylor was going to be able to pull this one out, not because of what you saw in the first half, but because of what the Cardiac Bears, as I like to call them, had done previously this season. Game winners against Iowa State, TCU, Texas Tech, West Virginia, all of those one-possession games where Baylor either led by a lot at one point, allowed the other team to come back, and they ended up winning it in the end, or it was just a back-and-forth game that Baylor ended up winning at the end anyways. So a game like this, you thought, minute 45, there's plenty of time for Baylor to go down there and at least tie the game. At least tie it, if not win it. Some late game heroics from these Cardiac Bears. But it was with 29 seconds left that Baylor threw an interception at the Oklahoma 38-yard line. So just a couple more yards and they probably would have been in field goal range for a chance to send this at overtime. That was Charlie Brewer's first interception of the game, and what a phenomenal game he had. Just devastating that they lost this, but a phenomenal game from him. 194 yards, 2 touchdowns through the air, 65 rushing yards, and adding 2 more touchdowns on the ground. So a career day and a phenomenal day for Charlie Brewer on the biggest stage for Baylor football in a long, long time. We know what happened a couple years ago with that big sexual assault scandal. We know what they went through in their first year under Matt Rule, going 1-11. And then to come with College game day in town, leading by 25, and to fall to Jalen Hurts, who had a career-high 27 rushing attempts for 114 yards and 4 touchdowns with nearly 300 yards passing, to lose to him in Oklahoma and Lincoln Riley in such devastating fashion just hurts for a Bears fan, for those that were rooting for the Bears, for those that enjoy seeing that Cinderella story. So a crushing blow in one of the wildest games of 2019 so far. Another unbeaten fell just a few hours before Baylor went down, and that was, of course, Minnesota, who beat Penn State last week, the number 4 team in the country, and made the biggest jump, I believe, in college football playoff history for a team going into the top 10, going from 17th all the way to 8th, so jumping 9 spots in last week's rankings. But in Minnesota's first true road test this season, they fell to the mighty Iowa Hawkeyes. Of course, Kinnick Stadium, a very, very difficult place to play. And we mentioned it being their first true road test because prior to that, they hadn't faced an elite road team this season. Penn State last week was really their first elite test, and they took care of that behind a dominant passing performance from Tanner Morgan. And it should be noted that Tanner Morgan put up some huge, huge numbers again against his Iowa defense, throwing for 368 yards and a touchdown. And if you were just looking at the numbers, so kind of like this Baylor game, if you were just looking at numbers, if you were just looking at first half, if you were just looking at everything and not the entire game itself, you would be shocked to see that Minnesota lost this game because the Golden Gophers outgained Iowa by 141 yards. They had the time of possession. They owned that. They had a great passing game from Tanner Morgan. So when you look at these numbers, you can't help but wonder, how did Minnesota lose 23-19 to the Hawkeyes? It was their offensive line that was their downfall. Morgan put up big numbers, but their running game could not get going because the offensive line could not help them out. Their running game was held to 63 yards after Iowa allowed 250 yards to Wisconsin's Jonathan Taylor just last week. So Kirk Ferentz doing a phenomenal job bouncing back and making the adjustments on defense to make Minnesota one-dimensional. And to stick along the offensive line struggles for P.J. Fleck and the Golden Gophers, they allowed 6 sacks in this game. A couple of those coming on the potential game-winning drive for Minnesota. 6 sacks in this game, 2.5 of them coming from A.J. Epinesa, arguably one of the best, if not the best, defensive player in the Big Ten. Although, of course, I would personally give that title to Chase Young over at Ohio State. But regardless, the offensive line was their downfall. They could not get a run game going, and towards the end of the stretch, towards the end of the game, they were unable to give their quarterbacks protection, and Iowa escaped with a huge, huge win in a Big Ten West showdown, and that, of course, narrowed it down to just 3 remaining undefeated teams in the entire country, with LSU, Ohio State, and Clemson, all of which will probably be ranked 1, 2, and 3 in Tuesday night's college football playoff rankings. Of course, you can see our official rankings that will come out tomorrow night, the Gridiron Experts official Week 13 Top 25. So moving on, those were the 2 biggest storylines, I think, going into Week 12 after Week 12. You see 2 of the remaining undefeated teams go down, a top 10 team and a Baylor team that blew a 25-point lead. I mean, you can't get any crazier than that. Can't get any wilder than that. But earlier in the day, go all the way back to 11 o'clock when college football was just getting started on this fine November Saturday. We saw one of the best players in all of college football go down with a season-ending injury, and potentially could have been the last time we saw Tua Tagovailoa step foot on the gridiron for Alabama. Could have been the last time we see him dressed up as a Crimson Tide football player, as many would expect he will go pro at the end of 2019. But Tua Tagovailoa went down with an injury in the third quarter of Alabama's victory over Mississippi State, 38-7 victory. And it's wild because we know that the past couple weeks, Tua's been battling an ankle injury, a high ankle sprain, something that kind of limited him a little bit, but not much in last week's loss to LSU. But this injury was completely unrelated. He got taken down and injured his hip. It was a terrible, terrible hip injury. It will require surgery, as we all know, and super, super unfortunate to see such a great guy in Tua Tagovailoa. Not just a great football player, but a great person to go down in a season that Alabama, of course, isn't going to win the SEC West because they fell to LSU, but their playoff hopes were certainly still intact. And they still are, sitting at number 5 in the country. But it will be very interesting to see where the committee ranks Alabama on Tuesday, where we rank Alabama on Monday, as they will lose Tagovailoa for the year and will rely on Mac Jones to try to get Alabama to the college football playoff and try to get them yet to another national championship, but of course without their Heisman Trophy candidate quarterback. Moving forward, once again, we'll stick in the SEC, the Deep South's oldest rivalry between Georgia and Auburn, and we said it. We pride ourselves on our prediction that we did for Oklahoma and Baylor, hitting that right on the head. But we said that Georgia-Auburn was going to be a close game as well, and that it was going to provide yet another classic between two top 12 teams in the entire country. And at first, it didn't look like that was going to happen. At first, it looked like Georgia was going to run away with this game, getting up 21-0 at Jordan-Hare Stadium. Keep that in mind, guys. Georgia coming on the road to Auburn and leading 21-0. Their defense, once again, proving why they're one of the best in the SEC, proving why they're one of the best in the entire country. It wasn't until there were 10 minutes left in the game that Auburn scored their first touchdown, and then Gus Malzahn got bold and kicked an onside kick that Auburn did in fact recover. But in my opinion, a very, very bogus call where an Auburn player had an illegal block on a Georgia player because he made contact before the ball went 10 yards. First up, that rule needs to get abandoned anyway. They need to take that rule out. I think that's ridiculous. But nonetheless, Auburn, despite recovering it, it got overturned. They were unable to get the ball back, had to kick it deep, but they forced a 3-and-out. They went and they scored a touchdown, cut 21-14. They forced another 3-and-out. Momentum was on Auburn's side, so despite the referees taking away that onside kick, despite the referees trying to maybe prevent that Auburn momentum, Gus Malzahn, the Tigers, said, "No, this is our house. We are going to win this game. We are going to get this momentum back." And after that second 3-and-out, Auburn found themselves down 7 and a chance to tie at 21, scoring 21 straight fourth quarter points, all in the fourth quarter. But it was with just a few minutes left that Bo Nix once again showed his freshman problems. He's a freshman quarterback. Mistakes are going to be made. And we've said before that he's not a bad quarterback. He's not a great quarterback. And we said that Jake Fromm certainly owned the edge in this one, as we did see. Yeah, sure, Bo Nix did put up better yard statistics, maybe some better numbers, but Jake Fromm was more efficient and got the touchdowns, which is what you need to win football games. But Bo Nix showed why he is a freshman, showed some things he's still struggling on, missing a wide open Harold Joyner on a 4th and 2, with just a little over 2 minutes remaining in the game. He hits Harold Joyner on that pass. Auburn picks up a first down. Who knows what happens after that? Maybe the Tigers don't score. Or maybe they do and they force overtime. And overtime at Jordan-Hare Stadium is not something you want if you are the visiting team. So he misses him there. Auburn gets the ball back late but unable to do anything. And Georgia escapes with a win in the 124th meeting between the Bulldogs and the Tigers. And that win clinched the SEC East for Georgia despite Florida taking care of business on the road against Missouri. So despite Florida annihilating Missouri and Kelly Bryant, Georgia's win at Auburn just clinched the Bulldogs yet another SEC East title and another appearance in the SEC championship game. And this year, it will more than likely be coming against LSU. So a big, big win for Georgia, an absolute thriller down on the Plains. And lastly, Oregon. We talked about teams clinching divisions. Oregon, the Ducks, the number 6 team in the country that very well could be number 5 come Tuesday. They clinched the Pac-12 North, so they will be playing for a Pac-12 title with their win over Arizona, 35-6 late Saturday night. Justin Herbert, a phenomenal game, going 20 for 28, 333 yards, and 4 touchdowns. So a phenomenal game for Herbert, a guy that once again should be considered for the Heisman, although we all believe that it is Joe Burrow's to lose. And Burrow putting up, once again, phenomenal numbers on the road against Ole Miss. So a wild, wild day in college football. As we mentioned, 6 top 25 teams lose. 2 unbeatens fall. A wild comeback down in Waco. Divisions are clinched. We lose a great player in the entire nation. So a wild Week 12 and a week that it wasn't supposed to be that crazy. Week 11 was phenomenal. We knew that. It was exciting. Penn State, Minnesota, LSU, Alabama. Fantastic games. Week 12 was kind of supposed to take a little bit of a back row seat. Kind of look at that in the rearview mirror, and they didn't. Week 12 showed up and showed out and continued to show why college football is so great and so unpredictable. We're going to take a look real quick at our teams trending up and trending down, much like we do every week at the conclusion of Saturday. And we'll look at our teams trending up first, and we've got a 7-3 Texas A&M team up here right now. And many will say, well, why? Why Texas A&M? Who have they beat? It's no one that big, no one huge yet. They still have Georgia and LSU on their schedule. Back-to-back games against the Bulldogs and the Tigers. So back-to-back games against 2 of the top 4 teams in the country. And unfortunately for Texas A&M, both of those games are on the road. But since Texas A&M's loss against Alabama, they have won 4 straight games and annihilated Mississippi State a couple weeks ago. And just yesterday, annihilated South Carolina 30-6 in College Station. While neither Mississippi State or South Carolina are your SEC powerhouses, when you can annihilate a team within your conference, it's a good day and it's impressive. I don't care who it's against. So Texas A&M sitting at 7-3, more than likely going to finish 7-5, but don't count out Jimbo Fisher and the Aggies. We're not looking ahead to that. Right now they're 7-3, and we have them trending up. Coming over here, we have Michigan. And once again, we don't like to put teams that are usually within the top 15, top 10 on our teams trending up. But I'm making an exception for the Wolverines. They're sitting at 8-2. And you could see, we've said it before and we'll say it again, you could see a drastic change in the style and the mentality of Michigan football from about that second half of their loss against Penn State to now. They nearly came back and beat Penn State in Happy Valley, and since then, all they've done is average 42.3 points per game and annihilated Notre Dame, Maryland, and just yesterday, Michigan State 44-10. We mentioned before how Michigan has struggled offensively. Were they ever going to get going? Was Shea Patterson ever going to get going? And their offense is clicking, and they're clicking in a big way. Michigan, in my opinion, one of the hottest teams in the country right now. Watch out for them, though. They've got Indiana coming up, a team they've struggled against as of late, team that's given them struggles. And, of course, that's right before they face off against Ohio State, one that many people kind of wrote off a few weeks ago as being an easy win for the Buckeyes. But if Michigan keeps this offensive pace going, they don't slow down, it could be a much closer game in the game. And then finally we have Pittsburgh closing it out, 7-3 trending up. They're 6-1 in their past 7 games. So, yeah, I think they're worthy of being on the trending up board. They're absolutely coastal contenders. And listen to this, Pittsburgh's got a game against Virginia Tech next Saturday. If they win out, which would include a win over Virginia Tech, and Virginia Tech beats Virginia in the season finale, Pittsburgh, not Virginia, not Miami, not Virginia Tech, Pittsburgh will win the ACC Coastal for the second year in a row. They're 7-3, and they know how to win the close games. I mentioned they're 6-1 in their last 7. The largest margin of victory out of those 7 games is 10 points against Georgia Tech. They know how to win the close games. Pat Narduzzi and his squad are doing phenomenal things in the Coastal Division. They are absolutely coastal contenders and in contention for a very, very good bowl game in the postseason. Trending down, we have Auburn. We're going to switch gears for a little bit. Why is Auburn trending down? Many people say they don't deserve it. Well, the fact of the matter is that they do. They have alternated wins and losses since September 28th, which was, of course, against Mississippi State. Since then, they have not won 2 consecutive games. Yes, they have quality losses. Yes, I know they've lost to Florida and LSU, and now they just lost to Georgia. But they are 7-3 right now. They're going to win next week, so they'll be 8-3. Then they've got Alabama to close out the year. I know they'll be without Tua, so maybe that's going to help out Auburn, who gets to host Alabama this year. But if they lose that game, they're 8-4. Another 8-4 season under Gus Malzahn. That's very, very, very disappointing. Auburn does not have a very good quality win on their resume outside of their win against Oregon back in the season opener. They just don't. You can maybe say Texas A&M, but outside of that, not really. Nobody else. They weren't able to beat LSU, weren't able to beat Florida, weren't able to beat Georgia at home. It's going to be make or break for them against Alabama, and if they lose that, Gus Malzahn might be out of a job with the Auburn Tigers. Texas, a team that deserves to be trending down because they're a team that's not back. Hate to say it, Texas fans. I hate to say it, but they're not back. They just lost 23-21 at Iowa State. And that's a team and that's a game that we thought Texas would lose. So I'm not surprised by that in the least. Iowa State winning that game on a field goal as time expired. But Texas sitting at 6-4 right now is something that does surprise me. That's something that shocks me. I thought the worst case scenario for Texas this year was 9-3. Worst case scenario. I think I had them at 10-2. But they are out of the playoff race. They were out of that a long time ago. They are out of the Big 12 title race now. And with a game against Baylor coming up next week, a road game against Baylor, Texas could finish the season 7-5. And that's extremely disappointing with all the hype and the expectations they had surrounding this team in Austin going into 2019. And then finally we have Stanford kind of finishing out the teams trending down. They've been on there before. We've got to put them back up there. They've lost 3 of their past 4 games, including blowout losses to UCLA and just last night, Washington State, who just got beat by California, who just got blown out by USC. The Pac-12 just continues to beat themselves up. And I know Stanford's been battling injuries all year long. I get that, and I get you can't control that. So the results aren't exactly what they want because of injuries, and that's just something you have to play around. You can't make an excuse. You can't make that your excuse, but it does happen. That's just the brutal world of college football. But they're 4-6 right now. Notre Dame remains on their schedule. California remains on their schedule. They might be able to beat Cal. I don't know if they can beat the Fighting Irish. There's a very good chance that David Shaw and his Cardinal will miss out on the postseason. That's a rarity. That's very rare from a David Shaw-led team. And I know the circumstances have not been ideal in 2019, but Stanford deserving to be trending down despite the struggles of the injuries, but they deserve to be trending down because of the struggles they've had on the field for about the past month. So guys, there you have it. Once again, our Week 12 didn't even address it. 27-5 straight up, 84.4%. Very, very good week straight up, if you ask me. 337-104 overall. So we cracked 100 losses, but hey, we are going to crack 350 wins just in the regular season alone. So we're very, very pleased with that. 76.4%. So if you've been following us for a while, you know that's where you want to be. We want to be 76% or better. So we're very pleased with that. Not pleased with our against the spread. So phenomenal straight up. Wish we could say the same against the spread. It was a bad week wherever you looked. I've got a lot of friends in the sports handicap business. I've got a lot of friends that are out there betting right now. I've got a lot of analysts that are doing that. It was a rough Week 12. Teams didn't show up. Teams didn't perform. Teams were missing extra points. Yes, I'm looking at you, Minnesota. So, yes, very unfortunate Week 12. We're going to bounce back. The overall still very solid, 54.5%. You round that up, we're at 55%, almost towards the end of the college football season. And we've got 2 weeks left, conference championship weekend, and then every single bowl game. So we've got a lot of room and a lot of ground to make up for the remainder of this season. So guys, your Week 12 recap, one of the craziest weeks once again we've had this season, and it's only going to get better as the season continues to draw to a close. So thank you for watching us here on YouTube. Make sure to continue to like, comment, subscribe. Go check us out on Twitter at Gridiron Expert. Check out the official website, thegridironexpert.com. Use the promo code GRIDIRON over at BetNow. The links for all those things are in the description below. And once again, thank you for watching. Please continue to like, comment, and subscribe. And we'll see you next time on The Gridiron Expert.